So we thought, why don't we go to the most toxic, intense tournaments we can possibly get to? And it was coming up in this collaboration video. Paul talks about Centurions.
What I do know how to play is 18 Centurions. Kind of.
Christian talks about the worst things to happen at tournaments. A tournament player ate my dog. Paul talks about Centurions again.
And Centurions are,
Christian talks about Legends units. It's my whole thing. I really like Legends. And Paul wants to know if you know.
My point being is like, and people are going to be, it's not,
So by the end of this video, I hope you know more about tournaments than before. Hello. Now, you know me, I'm Christian von Carmian, but not everyone knows Paul, the egg-shaped man next to me. Paul is allegedly bad at Warhammer.
Yes.
He is learning very well how to play Warhammer. Your tournament skills have gotten better, especially the win rate recently. Unless that's changed.
It's not doing too bad. I went 3-2, and then recently I went 1-2. It's about 50-50.
Hey, that's what Games Workshop wants. It's like, if everyone is doing 50%, it's fine.
Yeah. From most of my tournaments, yeah, it's 50-50 at this point, which means that Centurions are safe from any sort of nerfs or buffs.
Because you're the only one that plays them at tournaments that attract, of course.
Exactly.
I think some other people might. I've seen one list that did pretty well in an Ultramarines thing, which had 6 of them, but that was before the last balance patch. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, a lot of people were using them with Uriel because they're cowards.
Oh, that's before the previous balance
even
patch.
Earlier, yeah.
That was like February to March time. Totally different meta, totally different. You need to keep up with the meta in the tournaments.
No, you don't. You just need to play 18 Centurions, whatever happens, and then hope that the balanced data slates work in your favor.
Exactly. So we thought, why don't we go to the most toxic, intense tournaments we can possibly get to? And it was fine. I had some fun. How is it for you?
Yeah, it's very difficult to find specifically toxic tournaments, so I just went to a tournament and it was fine. I say I went to several. And
I also went to several. Big ones, small ones, whatever. And they were nice. They were fun. 2 days is a bit much. I prefer 1-day tournaments.
2 days is interesting. It's a different dynamic because with a 1-day tournament, usually it's 3 games. The third game, you're like, okay, it's the last game of the day, can get that second win, keep going. With a 2-day one, you get to the third game, you're like, damn, we've got to do a whole another day of this. This is going to be awful.
This is my whole weekend now.
Yeah, but I don't mind 2 days too much, like every so often. But yeah, the 1-day ones are a lot more accessible. It's a lot easier for me to go, yeah, I'll go to one of those because it's not as much of a time commitment. And they are still just as fun. And realistically, it's just the fact that you're playing 3 games instead of 5. That's the only real difference. And you have to go back there twice, yeah. The kinds of people who go to these tournaments, they go to a 1-day or a 2-day event. There's not people who only do 2 days. There probably are people who only do 2 days, only 1 days, but most people do both. Just because they want to play tournaments and whatever's around could be a 1 or a 2 day, right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, there's such a range of tournaments. 10 people can be a tournament if you're then playing like 3 games, and it doesn't have to be best coast pairing setup or any of the other ones. That can be like, okay, today we're doing a competitive event. It's 2 or 3 games. There's 10 of us. You'll play a bit. You'll play some Warhammers. That'll be fine. 200 people can be a tournament. All that's really different is the venue size and therefore the background noise. That's going to be very different for how close you are and have to hear people. And if there's some loud people, like at the last tournament behind me, I had an Eldar player and I knew his attacks more than I knew my opponents.
I've been all right in terms of having loud people nearby. It's just, it's generally very loud. I've not had someone cutting through the din of the hall or anything.
Oh, they weren't even American or anything because they're notorious for being loud.
I went to America a couple of years ago now. It was weird how some American accents literally pierce through a crowd like at Disney, and you can just hear one person. How they're not even speaking that loud, but their voice just pierces through.
Yeah,
but yeah, tournaments is loud, and especially when I went to the South Coast Super Major, the tables were pretty packed in tight, so a lot of stuff going on around you. If you were at one of the edge of the rows, it wasn't too bad, but if you were in the middle, it was just noise from all sides, and then if you wanted to go to the other side of the board, you had to go on a 5-mile hike to get around everyone. It's a bit of a pain, but
because the tables are like next to each other, no gaps in between.
Yeah, the ones I do locally aren't as bad, depending on how many people are there. The one I went to had a lot of space between each table, which was quite nice. There were a couple of places where 2 tables were next to each other. But yeah, the South Coast Super Major was, rows of 5 tables all next to each other, not that much room behind you. Not claustrophobic, but it certainly was, you weren't elbowing people accidentally constantly, but there was definitely not that much room.
You got to ask your opponent to like set up your models for you and things and hope that they touch them in just the right way. So you can do a lot of playing by intent. Like, yes, you set up the models, but we know that the banner bearer is meant to be at the front and they're 9 inches away, even though we haven't exactly measured, because it's deep strike. So of course they're going to be 9 inches away.
Yeah. I have a marker, 40mm marker for Shrike, because when I use him on his own, I like putting him in corners. And the amount of times I've knocked him off the table, or someone's knocked him off the table, means I'm just going to put this 40mm marker here to represent Shrike. If we need to measure height, I will put him there. Because he stands on a very...
broken bunker now.
Very large tactical bunker, so...
Tactical bunker.
I've got a slightly different one.
Effiel Stern's the same, with flying rocks and stuff. Again, I've converted my own, but yeah, that's different. I've also found tournaments are very warm, because you have that many people in a close area. So it's fine to go to a tournament in winter, less fun in summer.
I've not gone to one where it's been, well, not ridiculously hot. The ones that I go to locally aren't too bad. There's a decent amount of airflow through it. But yeah, the one in the South Coast Super Major, which was in, late winter, early spring. It was cold outside, but inside, yeah, it was warm.
2 years ago, I went to an event, and it was partly because of restrictions due to plague, but we moved like 4 of the tables outside into the car park and played there. It was, cooler outside in the sun than it was inside.
Fortunately, the most places I've gone are having big, very tall ceilings. Obviously, that doesn't help with acoustics, but just keep the room at least a little bit cooler. I can imagine that in the heat of British summer, nowadays, it can be pretty unbearable. I've not had experience of that yet. I'll let you know when that does happen, and if I ever melt, because I do not do well in the heat at all.
Oh, for some reason I don't either. So parasols are required.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But there's so many different kinds of tournaments. You could do Crusade can be a tournament. There's the grand narrative events that Warhammer runs, which are like one part is in the UK, one part is in the United States, and it's like 2 planets with interconnected narratives in theory. You could do escalation tournaments where you start at like 500 points and then your next game is 1,000 and your next game is 1,500. And 6 players doing that over a day, that can still be a tournament. So if you think you've never been to a tournament, you might have actually been to a tournament. You best start believing that tournaments exist because you're in one.
Yeah, I feel like the word tournament does, because obviously tournament is, implies competition. I think event is a better word even for the competitive tournaments, because then that does encompass more stuff, and I think that should be the word that more people use. I think when we talk about, because I usually talk about going to an event. Sometimes I'll say, went to a tournament, but it's not to get that all-encompassing thing. The word event just feels a lot better. Yeah,
you have to go to a place rather than your local club.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to, it is an event, a convention or something.
That's probably what most people think of as tournaments rather than the tournaments. Because the tournament pack that Games Workshop produces can be used anywhere, and I know there are people who use it anywhere and everywhere, even though it's meant to just be for events and says in its thing, this is for event organizers to run tournaments.
Yeah, but a lot of the stuff in there is useful for anyone. You
like the terrain layout, don't you?
Terrain layouts are... I've used terrain layouts for Crusade, and that might seem like heresy, but it's just one of those things where we want to have a board that is relatively fair. We're not great board designers. We don't want to waste, many hours on a doomed game, which we didn't realize was doomed because there was a massive open sightline or something. So we'll just grab one of these, plonk some terrain down, and off we go. It's an accessibility thing more than anything.
I think everyone I've played with uses the tournament objective marker rules, which is that objective markers are not things that are physically there. You can step on them, you can walk over them, you can finish your move on top of them. Whereas in the core rules, it's a marker. It's meant to be representing, something fancy like a stasis pod or whatever. And you're not meant to be able to finish a move on them, even if you can walk through them. So people tend to just pick tournament rules up as they go.
It's one of those things that I think just standardizes across pickup games. There's less having to work out, are we going to deal with this deal with this, that rule? It's just an easy way to make everything fairly standard. You kind of know what's going on. Obviously, there are stuff like, different rules. I think in America they have like is it WTC? Like the team
so it depends who's
slightly different rules.
That's a problem now, Paul. Whose tournament rules are you using? WTC, ITC, UKTC, Games Workshop's version? There's 4 different tournaments.
Yeah, I feel like that's a bit daft. I think making things more consistent is better. Even if there are problems, it's better that everyone does something wrong than a bunch of people doing things differently, because that's going to cause difficulty when you're trying to go between those different systems. I've played a UKTC, and then I think our locals just use standard GW. There aren't any house rules that I can think of that I know. I think they're very much just straight down the line of which is whatever the core rules are.
But each one wants to have their FAQ for like questions that come up that Games Workshop hasn't covered. But so many things, it was like the demo charges on the Acolytes at the start of the edition. It was not clear whether you got them back through Cult Ambush or if you got them back through the Cult Icon. Some people were doing it both. Some people were doing neither. Some people were doing one, not the other. So each one had their own ruling on how they do it.
It is tricky because there are always going to be inconsistencies like that. There's always going to be something. And again, this is a Games Workshop problem. And I imagine not even a Games Workshop problem. This problem probably comes up in loads of other games. But it's one of those ones where, how do you deal with those things? Because you can't leave it ambiguous, because then it kind of comes down game by game. So either you have to come up with your own rule or wait for GW. But the problem when you come up with your own rule is then you've got 4 different versions of that rule, depending on how you look at it. So that kind of thought and those kind of discussions might put off more casual people from going to these tournaments. But I have not really had anything like that come up, again, in my list. You mentioned the demo charges or whatever, that would have come up, but they're not super common.
When it comes to confusion, if it's an event, you can have the tournament organizer ask them, and hopefully you get the answer you want. And hopefully they've thought about it beforehand. And in theory, for a tournament event, you might have wanted to send questions beforehand like that. Less so if it's a pickup game and you're like, oh, we'll use tournament rules. Which tournament rules? How do we rule this? Games Workshop has it unclear.
Yeah, usually I just roll. There was an event. There was something happened. I can't remember what it was. I think my opponent in the first game I played recently was like, I'm not sure if I had this on or off whether I can charge with this or not. I can't remember where I put it. So we were like, I can't remember if it said that. So we'll just roll it off. 1, 2, 3, you can. 4, 5, 6, you can't. And it's just a quick way to go. Yeah, that makes sense, but we can't remember what you did. The game's moved on. You probably would have done it, but because we're not sure, let's just do a quick, roll off. And I think that works as well, pretty well for casual games. Again, it's one of those ones where if you're just doing a pickup game, just move it on quickly. If there's a discussion like that and there's no one to turn to, not sure, roll it off and then move on. It's adding more RNG, but it just kind of keeps the game moving. And at the end of the day, because all the people I've played with at these events have been super friendly.
Yeah, nice
Everyone's
people.
been pretty happy with stuff like that. So with a lot of these things, it's more about who you play. I feel like there are probably some locations where people can't get to, the local scene might not be great, but the stories you hear about that will put others off without them exploring their local scene to try and find out.
A tournament player ate my dog is the kind of story that you hear every now and then. Online stories.
Yeah, a tournament player came into my house and threw all my non-meta models on the floor, blocked my toilet, stole my cat, and told me to get good. Should I
when
pull
you
the
get
TO?
good, you get your cat back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose if you have a bad tournament experience because of a player, you remember it.
Yeah, I think it
They're the
also
same.
really depends on when that timing is, right? If you go to your very first tournament, you're like, Christian von Carmian and Porter's Ballot stuff are telling me I should go to a tournament. You go to your first tournament, the first game is awful, and then you're already
No, that's
tilted.
good. That's what you want. You want the first game to be awful and lose, and then your second and third games are against nice, normal, well-adjusted people.
But the problem would be is then you're tilted. You're like, oh, they lied to me.
Oh, I see. We spread misinformation online.
And then even if you've got nice opponents 2 and 3, you still aren't in a good headspace because your first game was so awful. And it didn't even have to be a game. You could have won the first game, but it could have been awful, right?
I practically fell asleep at one of my games. like at a tournament event, the first game, I was like so out of it because it was a pain to get to the event. I didn't get to the right place. It was like there's two places with identical names, and I went to the wrong one, which is like a mile away. Then I went to the right one. Then I was late. Then I just put stuff on the table. Then I forgot all my unit rules. It was not great, and I didn't win. But then the second and third games, I was actually awake.
Yeah, to be fair, the tournament I went to recently, I've not been feeling well, so I was just like unwell. I got there, I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling great, and my opponent was like
contagiously unwell.
No. It's been just tired, basically, not been sleeping very well. And then, but my opponent was then just like, yeah, I've got kids, so I've been up all night, so we were both just like knackered, just like trying to work out what's going on. It's like, oh yeah, I've accidentally left my home base free for Shrike to come down. I went, yeah, I get it. But then it's like, oh, all right, yeah, you have Plague Marines in a Rhino coming in from Rapid Ingress. Uh-oh. And then suddenly I'm dead. But we both had still a good time, even though we were both tired. I think it's one of those ones, again, we talk about it a lot, where it's win or lose, it's more about who you play and having fun with it. The games I lose are still, some of the most fun games I've had, as fun as the games I win.
Mm-hmm.
The games where I've been absolutely demolished have still been at least fun, even just because it's funny. Having been demolished and going, okay, well, I'm just going to try and kill Lionel Johnson now. Oh, wait, no, he has fights first. Oh, well, okay, well, I lose 99 to 25, but still. Also means that the game's over quickly and I can just sit here and rest for the next hour.
I lost quickly. That my reward is rest.
Exactly. Yeah. That's actually useful, because when you don't lose quickly, or the game goes down to the wire and you have 30 seconds to get your score in and you win because of a single roll, then you have to rush over to your next game. You're like, what's going on? How do I play? Let me sit down before I start setting up terrain again.
What's happening? Where am I?
How many Centurions do I have?
Too many.
Double, 36.
No, it's the wrong number. Oh dear. It's rare to meet someone who isn't nice in the same way as the normal games you meet with people. In fact, I think tournament players might be even nicer because they know that they don't know all of your rules. No tournament player knows all of the army rules of all of the factions. There's too many. So you're always going to be explaining rules to each other, and you're more willing to explain rules and ask questions, and you get more into it, and you have a rapport, and it's easier,
exactly,
I think, than, okay, here's an army, and if they ask what does that do, then it feels a bit like, oh no, I've said I was stupid and didn't know the rules. Whereas at tournaments, no one knows the rules and that's allowed. Okay, you do know the rules, you don't know everyone's army rules. That's a different thing.
Yeah. And everyone is always making sure, I will always remind people, by the way, I have this thing where I can move away if you try and charge me, and they'll do the same. It's like, by the way, just remember that this thing fights first, and it's in heroic range and all this stuff. So a lot of people will, it's fairly collaborative. Obviously, there are some things they're not going to tell you, like, oh, you should go over here because you can score points if you do this, because my battle plan requires that I do X and you could just counter it with Y. They're not going to help you with that, but they will help you with, they go, if you move there, I can do this.
Yeah, if you're going to do a stupid thing. Because I've seen the new, I played against the Dark Angels something, the Rock detachment, and that has a stratagem that lets Dark Angels charge at the end of your charge phase, which is different to Heroic Intervention. It's just if they're within 6 inches, they can charge you. So it's like, okay, I think I'll just stay on this objective. Just so you know, I have enough command points and I will charge you. Oh, I don't want to just sit on the other side of the objective. Good to know.
In one of my games, I was playing against someone who had Cypher, and Cypher gives a debuff to anything within 12 inches, makes your stratagems cost more.
Yep.
And we were basically just kind of working out stuff. I was like, oh, by the way, I can do this. And he was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I was like, okay, but you could have moved Cypher to here, and that would have doubled it. So I allowed him to do that as well. So stuff like that, just to make sure, like, I know what you can do. You forgot or weren't aware of the thing I could do, or, because it's the first time you played against it. This is how you could have countered it, so we can do that. Because you would have done that had you remembered that I could do this. And that happens a lot. That happens all the time.
There's players, 2 tournaments ago I went to, I was playing things, we got into his shooting phase, and I was like, oh, I forgot to rapid ingress. So he let me rapid ingress, which is fine, because it doesn't really affect the things you're doing. Let you move and use abilities you forgot after the fact. People at tournaments are not like, haha, you were not 100% awake in this intense tournament environment. I can't believe you forgot that. It's too late now. No one wants to be the first person to say that, because then when it comes to the shoe being on the other foot and you're like, oh, I needed to move here, it's like, oh, we don't do that now. No,
Yeah.
it's too late.
Yeah, because I think everyone has always been in those situations, picking stuff up at the end of your opponent's turn. Like if I pick up Shrike or someone is playing Eldari, picking up, swooping hawks and stuff.
Yep.
We will always just be like, oh yeah, I start my move phase. Oh yeah, I would have picked them up. And it's like, yeah, you would, of course, you would have put that up. It is very much a collaborative thing. I always say the reason people go to tournaments, obviously, it's nice to win, but it's just an easy way to play a lot of 40k. So if you want to play 40k, they're the best places to go, really.
Yeah, and if you crush someone, they still drive you to the shops to get lunch.
Exactly. Fortunately, our local place is right next to Sainsbury's, so we can all walk over there.
Oh, one of the tournaments I went to was in a hotel, and I could tell it was like the dance hall because it had wooden floor in the center and carpet around the edges, and that had a bar, and the bar was doing discounts, like cheap alcohol, so there were coasters on all the table. I was sat there playing Sisters, drinking my wine against an orc player who'd spilt some beer down his top. It was the strangest, weirdest tournament, but so much fun.
That is a dangerous. Basically, what you need to do is go to one of those and then just don't drink, and then you'll definitely start winning more and more over the time that you're there. As everyone else gets, you'll find in the second game when everyone hits that. I think it's called the Bulmer Peak, which is the exact amount of alcohol that you are just completely on it. So game 2 is going to be at the point where everyone is just 100%.
But not everyone hits that at the same point. I have really good alcohol tolerance, so I could keep going for like all 3 games.
Yeah, you need to make sure you're in that Bulmer Peak for longer. But it's such a
just
fine
keep topping
line
up
between...
just a little bit every now and then.
Yeah, just stop microdosing.
Yeah, microdosing wine as we go along. Oh, there's a miracle dice. Sip of wine.
Oh dear.
I have been beaten at tournaments, like in tournament games, and the players are not like, I need to utterly crush you now. Because, okay, I was against a Space Marine all-tanks army, with only maybe a couple of Tech Marines as infantry. My sisters can take on hordes, they can take on a bit of a mix, they cannot do all vehicles. So I was trying to score points, and he was going to get 100 points, no problem. There was no incentive for him to utterly curb stomp me. So he went into casual game mode, and I got maybe 10 more points than I should have. Even though it's a tournament, he's under no obligations to crush me on behalf of other players. He's just obligated to have fun and maybe get best conversion or best player. Yeah, the coveted best player trophy is the best trophy.
I've yet to win one of those. I will at some point, hopefully.
You need to bring sweets and offer sweets to people.
Just bribes. Just money. Just start handing out fivers. Somehow, I've played against some of the best players in the world. I played against, I think he might be this. I think he's the second best ranked player at the moment in at least the UK.
In their faction.
No, just overall.
All right. Okay.
This guy who constantly wins, super majors and grand tournaments. Really, really nice guy. Helped me in terms of like, oh yeah, don't do that. You could actually get more points if you do this. Actually helping me, with my own game as well. Taught me a lot. Even the good, like the really, really good players who play this a lot are nice and will always be willing to help you because they know that 1, that will get you to come back and play more, and 2, better competition for them is more interesting in the long run.
Tournament events have really upped their game in the last few years in terms of friendliness and enforcing rules and getting rid of bad actors and stuff.
Again, the internet is one of the things which is a double-edged sword. Obviously, we talk about the fact that you see all these bad stories, but it's also, I think, helping spread the word and helping increase the player base to the point where, the bad actors have been overwhelmed, essentially. And I think that is a good thing.
I think the worst players you're going to meet are the ones that, will put all of the limits of a tournament pack, a specifically chosen tournament pack from them, onto a casual game, and they'll do base size and terrain and whatever they think version of modeling for advantages and put them all on an everyday game. So you're more likely to meet weirdos there than at a tournament.
I feel like Warhammer and 40k is not that unique in terms of these kind of problems. I'm sure people in the Magic the Gathering space or video games, you can always tell which people are the, as they were called, grognards. They feel like they're better than they are. The loudest person in your game of League of Legends is usually the one who is doing the worst.
I don't play League of Legends.
Whether it is 40k, Magic the Gathering, a video game, they are out there. But I think because stuff like
They're out
Warhammer
there.
is
You need to
they're out
beware.
there.
They're out there. He said it. They're
in
out
the
there.
walls. They're looking for you. But because for these tournaments, I don't know about the online space, but I know for obviously going to them in person, there's not that barrier of the internet of anonymity between you and your opponent. So you
They
can't
can't leave mean comments.
exactly. And if they do, I know roughly where they might be on some Sundays. So
I have a rough geographical location of the county you may live in.
you are in a potentially 50-mile radius of me. I'll find you. Or I'll just complain about you on my channel, and then you'll be in trouble. And then you'll go, who's Paul? I was like, oh, don't worry about it.
Right. New players. We should talk about the new players.
Yes.
Tournaments are going to be good. And yes, that you get to play lots of 40k. You can be new. You can be not super competitive focused and have a good time at tournaments. People will just be bringing their best lists most of the time. There's the occasional person who's like, I brought a Storm Raven.
Who would do such a thing? Who would bring a Stomper or 3 Rampagers or a Warhound Titan? I've seen all 3 of those.
I have seen a Warhound Titan. It was mentioned in one of the earlier 40k events when Games Workshop used to have people there talking about it, and they were weirdly dismissive of this one guy who had a 1,000 point Titan, even though they put rules on it. It's like, he's not going to win. It's like, how do you know he's not going to win? He could win. It might be a great strategy. You don't know. I mean, they do because they wrote the rules and they wrote the bag for the Titans, but they don't know.
The Titan's heavy. You could throw that at your opponent, give him a concussion, then you can definitely win.
It falls over. It crushes models.
Exactly.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say for new players is make sure you know the core rules and know your own army rules, so that when your opponent asks, what do they do? You don't go, something, they have guns, maybe they shoot them. So learning trial by fire in tournaments, I think you'll have a bad time.
Yeah, you need to have an understanding of the game. I mean, you could go and your opponent would probably be, nice enough and will help explain the game to you and then crush you, but not crush you on purpose, to crush you for the fact that they know how to actually play the game and you don't. I don't think
helps.
Anyone who has gone, and just to anyone out there listening, if you've just decided to, I'm going to play 40k, I'm going to go get my first army, and I'm going to build it and go to a tournament next week, probably don't do that. Not just because you're going to get in way over your head, because it is a complicated game. People probably aren't going to be, they probably won't be too upset, but it's going to be a weird time.
I think it's a mismatch of expectations, because tournament players expect you to know the rules and not have to double check every unit's stats. They don't need to be a top army meta or something that they're facing, just know the rules, and time is even tighter than in a normal game. You're doing 2,000 points in 2.5 hours, maybe?
Yeah.
Rather than the normal 3 hours that's recommended for normal people. Even then, games will last longer than 3 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got to know the rules to be able to do the game fast enough. Because I have played against almost totally new people who had the 9th edition starter set, those Space Marines, and a few more Space Marines. And I think we got to the start of turn 3.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, even by that point, I was 30 victory points ahead or something silly. Or however they did victory points at the time. Significantly ahead. But it was just difficult. I wouldn't want to say, get a clock out and start timing this person. They know they're going to take way too long. And they're just going to feel even worse if you get through their hour and a quarter's worth of time, and then I just get to play the whole game, and they're like, well, I didn't get to move, and this didn't seem fair, and I don't like this.
I've been in situations a lot when I'm in tournaments where I've gone, I've never played against this army, what does it do?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, outside of Chaos Knights and a couple of others, that's pretty much every army, because, if you're playing with your friends, they usually have a specific army, right, that you're going to play against a lot. When you go to a tournament, you're going to play against a whole host of stuff. I've pretty much played against most armies now. There's still a few I haven't played against, but most people in that situation go, "Oh, cool! I will just tell you what my stuff does, and I will tell them what my stuff does."
I've played AdMech once in the index, really near the start of the edition. Never seen them since. Never seen them since the Codex, so I would have no idea what they do.
Yeah. Oh, but I've got one of the people who I go to tournaments with a lot, who I've played a few friendly games with as well. I think he's the second best AdMech player in the country. Out of all 2 of them.
Yeah,
but, AdMech's weird. AdMech's complicated, and I have played against him a couple of times. Gone, yeah, these guys are interesting. I can't remember what they do every time. Same with stuff like Sisters. I played against Sisters I think once, and I was like, oh yeah, this is I kind of know what they do. You know, they have the miracle dice, and then they started throwing repentance at me. And go, oh, you know, they're wearing basically nothing. That'd be fine. Oh god, they're killing me. Oh god, what did they do? Here comes Morven Val.
Full rerolls to hit, full rerolls to wound, AP -2, 2 damage.
Yeah, very, very scary. And then suddenly I'm dead. And I'm like, oh, that was... I'll try to remember that for next time. But yeah, there is so much going on at these tournaments that as long as you kind of know how to basically play the game, how to interact with the actual game, you know, it'd be like going to a fighting game tournament and going, what does a controller do? Like, as long as you know what the controls do, you don't have to know what every single, you know, fighter does.
Or all the combos.
People will help you with that part, or what all the combos are. People will help you with that, and then you'll start to get better. But you need at least a base level understanding of the game.
I was thinking, if you're totally new, maybe you can get away with a doubles event. But thinking on it, when I've been to doubles events, you do eventually come across one pair who is, one person is playing a 2,000-point army, and one person is watching, here's my army, off you go. It's like a couples thing. You play my army, darling, I'll go get the food. One person playing 2,000 points against two people playing 1,000 points each.
Yeah, there needs to be what would be quite interesting is an event which is something like, I think it's a concept in chess, it's hand and brain, where you have someone who's good at the game, who has played a lot, they don't even have to be good at the game, as long as they know the game, helping someone new. And the way I believe hand and brain works in chess is that the person who is good tells the new person what piece to move, but doesn't tell them what to do with it. And so the brain is like guiding the hand, and then the hand has to decide what to do. So you could help teach people how to play games. That would be a fun event where you have one person who's going, okay, I want you to move that unit of looters, and then you have to work out where they think you should move it.
Either into the open to shoot at something, or maybe towards an objective. Yeah,
so it's one of those ones where it might be quite an interesting event to think about, which will help new players. So I think with the doubles thing, you know, like you say, if someone comes in and they're basically just playing a 2,000-point army on their own, that's not exactly doubles, is it? So it's one of those ones where there is a level of expectation with some of these events, and maybe there should be a wider range of events that do cater to helping new players enter, which there are. I'm sure there are like events out there which are like, hey, new players, come and throw your models at another new player and see what happens. I guess that's what like 500 points and, you know, combat patrol type stuff is for, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's actually combat patrol tournaments. I imagine there must be.
There's 100% combat patrol events. Yeah, 100%.
I can't think it'd be too balanced because they're crazy in the different things they can do. Like the cult ambush rule in the previous combat patrol, which is still there on the app, is different to the cult ambush rule for the next combat patrol. And if they bring out another combat patrol and for like 11th edition and the rules are the same as they are now, that's going to be a whole different combat patrol rule set for the cult ambush rule.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff. But tournaments can have their own rules for what is and isn't allowed. I have been to tournaments that allow Legends rules and Legends units, and this seems to be something that blows people's minds completely. Like, you can't use Legends at tournaments, and then there's tournaments that allow them. The first tournament you went to, because you shared the tournament pack, I looked at that, and it allowed Legends units.
Yeah. However, they have now stopped allowing Legends, so I don't know what happened there. Maybe someone brought something that was so deep hidden in the bowels of the Legends minds that they went, oh, we can't have this. Legends is an interesting topic, and I think it's one of those ones which...
It's my whole thing. I really like Legends. We should keep using them.
Legends is useful because the other options, they just remove the rules entirely, right? I mean, one of the options is they keep the rules entirely, but then they have to try and balance these weird old things, maybe. So Legends is a useful tool, and I think people should be allowed to use Legends there should be events for Legends, 100%. And that's what they're there for, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, what would happen if, hypothetically, the Centurions became Legends units and were no longer sold?
I don't deal with hypothetical questions. You know, it's one of those things where...
You're like a politician, uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, no, you got to deal with reality, and the reality is that Centurions are never going to Legends. If Centurions went to Legends, then...
You have another year at least.
Yeah, I've discussed this before. If Centurions go to Legends, then I'll probably proxy them or something else, or I will just turn up and, you know, just be like, no, then just deny that they went to Legends. Just be like, no, they're real. They're still real.
You probably could contact the tournament organizer and say, hey, I want to use this one Legends unit. Is that fine? And they might be like, yes.
One Legends unit, half my army. I'll print my own cards, my own Space Marine 11th edition codex, and add Centurions back in to be like, look, see, they're still here. I'll basically just I'll gaslight the entire 40k community into believing that Centurions never went to Legends.
I mean, maybe I should do that with Celestians with guns. Although they didn't even get Legends rules, it's like really rare for them to miss out a unit completely. Then you're allowed to be salty if they're not there at all.
True. Yeah, if Centurions they just delete Centurions. Oh no, Centurions never exist. What you're on about?
The world is healing.
Yeah, then it's on site.
Yeah, I'm trying to get everyone around to my way of thinking that Legends units can be used in all of your games. The attitude of, I hate that I can't use my model anymore, doesn't seem to work when the rules are right there, and you can use them. And I have a link saved as a quick reference to send to people to show them that here's where the free rules are. They're free. You don't need to buy the codex. Here's the rules. They're free. Play with them. They're great. They're called Legends. It doesn't matter that they're called Legends. They're unit rules to play with.
Exactly.
It's just models that aren't sold by Games Workshop anymore. That's it. That's the whole thing. So to keep a level playing field, which is more like you can't buy the models from Games Workshop, so you couldn't get something if it's like, oh, this is a perfect thing for my army, but the unit isn't there. But then again, so many things are sold out online for Games Workshop that doesn't really hold up.
Half of Drukari's entire roster isn't available.
Yeah, that's all temporarily sold out and not available.
But on the flip side, Drukari is the easiest thing to kit bash, so I guess it, doesn't matter that much. In terms of like stuff like models, kit bashes, I've seen people always say, "Oh no, Games Workshop don't allow any creativity. You have to do, the standard stuff." So I've seen a Seraphon World Eaters army. I've seen a Nightmare Tzeentchian Baby Knight army. I've seen an Exodite Eldari army. I've seen a Squig Tyrannid army.
I've seen a giant in a cool Inquisition hat.
Don't care. People, as long as it looks, as long as you're not going, oh yes, this Centurion is absolutely a grot, and people are going to be fine with whatever cool stuff. I have essentially a 3D printed Shrike model that I use as Shrike. I didn't used to, but because I couldn't be bothered to build my other Shrike, I use that, and people are like, that's cool Shrike. I've got the Tech Marine that everyone loves for some reason, I don't know why, which is, that's a kit bash. My entire Vanguard veterans have 3D printed claws, backpacks, helmets. They're based off Assault Centurions, and everyone is fine with it because people want to see cool models.
Unless you're at a Games Workshop run event with them in one of their shops, you can use proxy models, 3D models, third-party models, heavily converted models, kit bash models, scratch-built models, other game system models. I have a Robotech Sentinel, which is about the same size. No one cares. You shouldn't be afraid to kit bash.
And I think the thing people are worried about is going, oh yeah, Games Workshop run events. They're very, very few and far between. Realistically,
unless it's in one of their shops or at Warhammer World, that's about it.
And I think even at the shops, I think people probably aren't going to be like, throw you out. They're just be like, okay, that's cool. But I think Warhammer World is the one place which it might be a little bit less acceptable. But even then, what I hear, as long as you aren't like shouting from the rooftops, hey, look at my 3D printed model over here. Hey, Games Workshop, look over here. There's a 3D printed model. No one's exactly,
no
looking
one cares.
down the cameras. There's not anyone in a camera room in the security, like zooming on everyone's model, trying to make sure that every piece on there is fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Genuinely don't worry about it is the best thing to think of with models. Yeah. People are going to say, that's cool as a kit bash. Your models don't have to be WYSIWYG, where what you see is what you get at tournaments, which is another thing people assume tournaments must be.
Yeah, I mean, I played a recent game against someone who had Gazgul Thracker, and unfortunately he dropped it at one point, so it had one arm. And Vakari, I think, had been destroyed, so we had to use a bomb squig. It's like, fine, that's whatever, works.
Yeah, your Vanguard veterans, they have... What do they assume? Either shields or assume they have Inferno pistols?
Yeah, they have
even
lightning
though
claws.
They're not on the models.
Games Workshop took away lightning claws, which is the worst thing they've ever done. But yeah, it people, especially stuff like pistols. And the other thing to consider is, again, if you put a gun to my head and said which one of these Drukari weapons is the splinter cannon, I'd be like, I don't know.
Alien weapons, Tau weapons, they're the weirdest ones. No one can tell.
As long as you're consistent. That's all that really matters. As long as it's consistent, it makes sense.
If it isn't like, okay, this squad with the two flamers, one of them's a flamer, one's a plasma gun. The other squad with two flamers, one's a melter gun and one's a sniper rifle. That's going to get confusing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's fine. If you have like a Metamorph squad with half auto pistols and half hand flamers, and you say they're all hand flamers, that's fine.
Yeah. The one I always point to again is Drukhari with Scourges, because Scourges come with one of each gun.
Yes.
If you have 3 units of Scourges and you model all of them with one of each gun, and just say all of them are Dark Lancers, that's fine. You could even, it might be, it's probably on the line, but you could have like one rimmed slightly differently, go they are a different weapon. And that's probably fine as long as it is fairly obvious. Like, don't be like, oh yeah, the ones with the red eyes have Dark Lancers, the ones with the blue eyes have Haywire Blasters. Like, that would be a bit much. But if you have like a very obvious indication, like one of them holds a sign saying, hey, we hold Haywire Blasters, then, that's probably also fine. It's just making sure that it is consistent and clear.
You submit your tournament list,
change around,
and then you stick to the list, and you explain your list to the opponent. The Adeptus Sororitas Priest, assume they have the Vindictor, which is the better weapon. You can assume that, oh yeah, these Retributors, they all have multi-melters, even though the box only contains 2 multi-melters if you buy the box, which is so weird. Same thing as like the Scourges, yes.
Exactly, yeah.
But then we have modeling for advantage, which I hear so often. It's a rule that has this weird, I think, tournament event related, everything is evil, tournament player ate my dog kind of video behind it, where it sounds like someone has spit every time they said modeling for advantage. Because I have a Facebook account now, and I've seen someone post really cool Seraphim with Battle Sister bodies, so they're Seraphim on foot, not with the flying stands, and they were dogpiled by comments about modeling for advantage, and yeah, that's okay when you're playing with a child, not at a tournament. I don't know where you live. I don't think I'll ever see you, but I'll never play with you. And I just have to hope that like the 120 heart reactions outweigh the weird comments. Clicking the like button is a nice way, but a good comment saying, I liked this video means so much more to us.
I put a thumb up, except the fact that this model doesn't actually allow me to thumbs up, so that was completely pointless. I think a lot of the time people are worried about, from this like little antenna or modeling for advantage. But a lot of the time people just go, that's silly. Like, I played against someone who, they had a Night Lord's army, and they were just like, I'm not gonna go from the spikes both ways just because they're annoying. And one of them didn't have spikes on, so he was like, won't play with the spikes. That's absolutely fine. I played with someone who had, I think they bought secondhand Death Guard Greater Mephitic Blight Horse, or the other one.
Okay, a tank.
Greater bloat drones, the bigger bloat drones from Forge World. So they were really tall. He was like, basically, what we'll play it like, depending on height. I'll basically play it that they are this tall because they are too tall. So if you can see them, it's too tall. But again, it didn't really come up.
I mean, I don't think it should matter. I think the tournament pack is like all buildings are like 6 inches high or 4.5 inches high or something.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where with tournaments, if you're obscured, you're obscured, and then if you're in a building and there's no windows on the ground floor, you can't be seen anyway because it's true line of sight. People are worried about stuff like wings being stuck out, or for the Storm Raven especially. Storm Raven's an absolute nightmare because the whole thing counts as the hull. So that sticking out all over the place is annoying. Because here's the other thing with modeling for advantage. It's a massive pain in the ass to actually do these conversions. So you're probably doing them.
Do a lot of effort to. Okay, you have to do some effort. Like it's a scale. Let's say at the far left of the screen, it's everything is converted. You change it up. You make a John Blanche inspired army. Some people will say that's modeling for advantage. Even if they can't figure out what the advantage is, they'll assume that because it's different, it must be for some advantage somewhere. And at the far right is put like some A4 card attached to the side of my Rhino so it blocked line of sight to your tanks. Or you got the skimmers with their nose pointed at the sky so they can fit into some terrain that they otherwise wouldn't. Then it is very deliberate and very overt in the advantage. That is actually modeling for advantage, and you just get told, stop that.
Yeah, and I've never seen that. I think when people are modeling these cool conversions, the thing they're not thinking about is, oh, how's this going to make me better on the tabletop? No, people are doing it because they think it looks cool.
Yeah, like your Tech Marine is bigger than it should be.
Yeah, but no one cares. It's not significantly bigger enough. Like, technically, the wings on my Vanguard veterans probably stick out too far. The only thing that's really annoying about them is that when you try and rotate them to fit more things in, they keep clashing because they're so far over the base. But it's not modeling for advantage, it's just because they look cool. I've never even suspected anyone has been trying to model for advantage at all. It's never been a thing that has actually come up for me in terms of going, oh, that doesn't look right. Every time something looks different, it's been on purpose because it looks cool and they wanted to do a cool conversion.
Yeah, or they don't want to put on an easily snappable antenna. They don't want to use the curves of the flight stand for the Inceptors and Seraphim because they're stupid. So you put them on foot.
No one's going around going, "Hey, that Incursor has an infiltrator helmet. They can't be Incursors." Do you even know? Like again from a distance of standing at a table, can you even recognize the difference?
No, that is cheating with a capital C. You didn't build it exactly like the picture on the box art, therefore you must be cheating.
Hey, you're trying to be creative. We don't allow that here in these tournaments. It's standard or nothing. Get out of my sight. That doesn't happen.
Well, it was pretty shocking when at the Dallas Open tournament, big tournament, Jeffrey Kolodner, who has a unique Canonist with a massive flag, he has a Calidus Assassin, which isn't posed on a rock with flowing hair, and his Paragon Warsuits have cat ears. Then, at this big grand tournament, I was shocked when he was thrown out and banned for modelling for advantage.
Oh.
That didn't happen, of course. That doesn't happen. Of course it didn't happen. What an absurd thing to even think for a moment it would have happened. Modelling for advantage isn't a thing.
Now, if the cat ears were very, very large and had guns on them, that's modelling for advantage.
Yeah, any of these conversions are not modelling for advantage, even if you totally change the height of the model. Maybe it was because Jeff Kolodner's opponent in Game 6, Robin Roberts, very good Genestealer cult player, he had Necromunda models as proxied for neophytes, and a Benefictus. This is perhaps the most important point about modelling for advantage. At top Warhammer run tournaments, the top players of their factions, at a tournament I didn't go to, so we can never know for sure, they have proxies and conversions way out of the official model's proportions, and it is not modelling for advantage.
No. The thing is, I think most of the time people have changed their models, it's usually at a disadvantage.
Oh yeah, almost always.
Like, again, people are not making these models and not doing these conversions because they want to win games. They do it because they like the way the model looks and they want to be creative. Some people might not enjoy painting, but they are still painted. They might be basic, but they're still painted. And then they're not going to spend even more time trying to make a conversion. If you want to spend time trying to win a game and you spend your time trying to model for advantage, you're better off just spending that time playing more reps and getting better at the game.
Yeah, you've got to have a weird mindset of, I'm going to do weird hacks to try and get an advantage, which isn't really an advantage because you're going to lose the game anyway because you don't know how to play the game too well. I have more to say about modelling for advantage, but let's save that for a separate video.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Like, again, it's similar with people about, meta chasing and meta lists. And again, this isn't exclusive to Warhammer because you'll see it in video games where people go, I'll use the meta character. You could give me the most meta broken list, and I would probably still lose because I'm going to make some dumb mistake and I don't know the army. Like, if you gave me Death Guard right now, for example, and said, here is the most meta Death Guard list, go out and play. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I've got the best meta list, but I don't know how to play Death Guard. What I do know how to play is 18 Centurions. And so,
yeah, you might do better with 18 Centurions.
I'll do better with 18 Centurions because I know how they work. Kind of.
Feel the same with detachments as well.
Yeah.
The best detachment, because for Sisters of Battle, in theory, the best detachment is Hallowed Martyrs. Maybe Champions of Faith at a smaller game. I've just done a video on that. I'm going to keep playing Army of Faith because it works for the models I have and the tactics I use, and I can remember all of their rules. That's the important thing.
The Sisters player who usually goes positive at all the events I've been to, Tui, who he's beat me once and haven't played against again, but he seems to always go positive. He plays Penitent Host, and he does well with it. I don't know if Penitent Host is good, but he seems to be doing fine with it.
It can be if you know how to use it really well. I mainly have fun with Penitent Host rather than, oh yeah, I've got all of the tactics down. There's a couple of tricks I know. One of them is mainly hiding behind terrain.
Yeah, he seems to do very well with Penitent Host, so clearly he knows how it works. And it's similar with me playing Vanguard Spearhead. My list basically would work with every single detachment. And I think there's a lot of detachments which would possibly be better for me because, access to, Gladius is going to be good regardless, but, Firestorm, access to assault weapons, Stormlance, access to assault and charge, advance and charge. Imperial Fist one that I can't remember the name of, to get heavy, to get a better shooting. The Iron Hands one, I can't remember what it does, but I'm sure it's probably fine. But I just like Vanguard Spearhead. Vanguard Spearhead's detachment rule is really, really good, except when you go against things that don't shoot you. which seems to be half the time. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, -1 to hit when you're over 12 inches. Oh, you have no guns, you're going to run at me and punch me in the face. Well, that's a problem.
You do get that against the Dark Angel something of the Rock. Their detachment rule is you're -1 to wound them if your strength is higher, and I use the Cabal of Chaos detachment, which is you get +1 strength at range. So it's like, haha, I will wound you on a 3, except I won't. I'll now wound you on a 4. Your detachment rule perfectly count as mine.
Yes, we have removed both rules from the game.
Yep. It's just weird they came out at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where you will get better at the thing you want to do, and you'll have more fun doing it.
Oh yeah, you should always pick the army that's fun for you and the models you like painting.
Yeah, you will have a lot more fun making the army by building and painting it. You'll have more fun playing the army, and you will do well if you continue to stick with it. Like you will. The thing I'm finding with my list at the moment, very, very good players who have played a lot of games aren't too scared of 18 Centurions because they know how to play around them. But people who haven't played as many games or are starting to get into more tournaments don't know how to react to it properly and will make a mistake which I can capitalize on. Again, in different games we have that kind of noob stomper champion, for example, let's say in a MOBA or something, which is really, really good if you know how to use it against the people in lower tiers. But when you get to higher tiers, people know how to counter it. And I found that with my list, because I've learned how to maneuver my list, that gives me an advantage against people who might be playing something more standard who aren't used to it. But people who play a lot of games just go, oh, this is like something I've played against before. I know how to counter this really easily. Essentially,
you're the middle of the pack.
I'm middle of the pack. If you're about the same skill as me and worse, and you aren't used to my list, I can win. If you're better than me, I will never win with this list. Even if you have a terrible list because you know how to counter my very weird skew list that has very hard counters, but also very hard counters other lists, because half the list is Centurions. If you can't deal with them, you're boned. If you can deal with them, I'm boned. And it's a very weird place for my list to be in, that I was trying to learn and discover this list, and then realize, oh wait, yeah, I basically just made this horrible skew list, which is going to now be RNG based on who I play against.
Yeah, well, it's like that Sisters list I have, which is terrible against tanks, but fine against combined arms and infantry horde. And at that point, though, if someone who was brand new was like, I have Firestorm Space Marines, I'm going to come at you with all these tanks, and I just move up to the middle, get some victory points, and then hide, they may not be able to do too much for like 2 turns, and I'm scoring plenty, and then I just try and stay alive. I have tactics. If you know that that's my weakness, if you know you're going to hit me with tanks, don't come to events and deliberately hit my sisters with tanks. But if you did, and you knew what you were doing, I lose very quickly.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those ones where you will start to learn how to play around those things. Like I eventually will learn how to play against things that will just run at my face really quickly. I'll throw the right thing in the right time at some point. Like there have been games where I've ended the game with 15 of my 18 Centurions left. The problem being is I end the game with 15 Centurions who walk 4 inches and can't get any score. So, if the game was another 10 rounds, it'd be great because I've wiped you and now I can very slowly make my way to get all of my victory points. But the problem is that's not how the game works. Like I say, with going to the tournaments, you do just learn to get better, and you're going to have more fun learning something you like, even if it isn't particularly strong. People thought Dark Angels was pretty bad, but there's a Dark Angels player who has done, both times I've been to tournaments with him, he went 5-0 then 3-0. Even if the meta stats say, oh, this list is 40% win rate. Look at someone like Archon Skari, who is the only reason that Drukhari ever have, just get nerfed every time, because he's on his quest to try and get 300-point Stormraven bombers. He has put the time in to learn how to play Drukhari, and whatever state they're in, he will win because he's learned to play the game well.
Yeah, looking at Jeffrey Kolodner's list for the recent Dallas Open with the Battle Sisters, it is almost exactly the same as the list he played in the Index, 2 years ago. It's the same list. I don't fear the man that changes to the meta detachment every week. I fear the man who's played the same detachment every single week for 1,000 weeks.
Yeah, I don't fear the man who plays 1,000 Centurions once. I fear the man who plays 1 Centurion. No, the other way around.
1,000 Centurion 1,000 times?
Don't fear the man who plays 1 Centurion 1,000 times. Fear the man who plays 1,000 Centurions. No, that's still wrong. Fear the man who plays Centurions is what I'm trying to say. Fear me. I am scary. Trust me.
Yeah, it's weird being in a room with you.
Yes. I am very much... I have a very, terrifying aura. Also, I've been told. By no one.
Yep. Should we talk about the terrain at tournaments?
Sure. I mean, if I said no, that would have been a really terrible
No, I mean, you
transition.
totally could, and we could just end it there.
No, yeah, you know what? Just just cut the video there. Yes, let's talk about terrain.
So I was wondering what you thought about terrain at tournaments, because almost all of the terrain at the tournaments I've been to, it looks really bad. They'll cut a piece of cardboard and stick any ruin on it and say, yeah, that's your 6x4 square of cardboard. There's your 3 inches of ruin. Play on that. Or maybe they're spreading 2 or 3 tables worth of terrain, well, like 2 tables worth of terrain over 5 or 6 boards because they're a small local club. And then it looks really not great to play on.
I've had pretty decent terrain. Yeah, it's not the best looking, but it works. Because I do get a lot of comments of people going, you know, oh, that looks awful. Oh, I hate playing against on the same L-shaped terrain over and over. It looks boring. You know, people
it is boring.
get, you know, it's boring, but the thing I find with it is it's consistent. It's easy because you can just, you know, 3D print or find the same very basic L-shaped ruins, and as long as you've got a good set of those, you can fund the tournament. And logistically, it just makes sense. You could spend your time making lovely, you know, beautiful terrain, beautiful battlefields that look awesome, but that takes a lot of time, you know, a lot of skill. And if you're trying to cater to 50, 100, 200, 500 people, you need something that is serviceable. And even on the other side of that, if you're going to a, you know, just a local game and you just want to get terrain set up, it's easy to find those kind of sets which are just 6x4s and 2 5x10s or whatever. They're easy to just make out of scrap. Like if you just have books lying around, you could probably just put them together to make an L. The tournament companion gives you the layout without you having to worry about whether you're going to make a terrain board that is going to be disadvantageous, and you've got ones there that are easy to just set up and go. And when you go to these tournaments, it is one of those things where I don't mind it, because the other option is the tournament doesn't run because they don't have terrain.
You could do a bring your own terrain tournament.
You could
bring your army and like 2 ruins.
Just for standardization, consistency, and just ease of use, I honestly don't mind it too much. And I think that when people are, you know, they go, oh, I would never play on this because it's just so boring, I want more narrative stuff. It's like, yes, but you're trying to tell someone who has 20 sets of this terrain and has to box it up and move it out of the hall they rent over and over again, that it's got to be rigid and sturdy and not break if they're transporting it around. You're asking them to try and make you these lovely scenic terrain pieces for events which cater to a lot of people.
Yeah, it works when you're at home. It works if you can bring some nice things to a small club. If you're running a massive event, a box full of cardboard is about all you're going to get.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's absolutely not a problem. You go to pickup games and everyone's using standard terrain because it's the easiest thing to do. It's kind of the expected thing just to get a pickup game going, rather than, you know, discussing with your, if you go to a you know, to a local club or whatever and try and get a game, and you go to your opponent, okay, I want to play with all this really fancy terrain, we wanted this and that. It's like, okay, now you've got to extend the game time because you're trying to work out how to set up a really nice table with someone you've never met. Try and be fair to both of your armies. It's not really going to work. So
it does work. I've done it. I do it often.
Yeah, maybe it will work, but I find for me,
the tournament default is the default.
Having a default is useful just to have standardization. And again, for me, it's one less thing to think about. It's not impossible. Like you say, if you've done it, it's absolutely fine. And you can, you know, obviously if you're doing a pickup game, you arrange with that person before, go, hey, we should try this cool terrain. It's like, cool, then you've got time to do it beforehand. I feel like when people...
It doesn't work at tournaments so much, yeah.
Yeah. When people get annoyed at the fact that everything's L-shaped, it's like, yes, it's because that is... Standardization is just logistics.
Yeah, because tournaments are almost always going to be L-shaped ruins.
If you look at an L-shaped ruin and go, oh, I wish there was one tree, there's just a tree, then I get it. But
bring your own tree.
Places like Tabletop Tactics, right? You know, the Lodge, all of their tables are different. They're all wonderful because obviously they built them up over time for their videos, and now they're able to share them with people who go to their events.
And they're in one place. They don't have to transport them between places.
If I went to the Spider and went, hey, Spider, I want to run a tournament with your terrain. Could you come and bring all of your terrain with you, all of your boards, to this random warehouse in the middle of nowhere? Oh, and by the way, like with other tournament organizers, could you do that weekly? You know, just hop around weekly with all of this terrain? It'd be very difficult because all of them will have to be stored differently, potentially very fragile in some places. And like good terrain, good thematic terrain does not scale. And I think that is one of the things where you go to these tournaments where you're trying to make everything more fair, so no one's at an advantage because they're on a different terrain layout. And again, tabletop tactics, each table is different, so you all play the same mission, but it's on different tables with different deployment zones.
Yeah, I think that's good.
It may
I
or
think
may
that
not be
could
an
be
advantage
interesting.
there.
Like, oh, one of our tables doesn't have much
Yeah.
terrain. One of our tables is more dense than the others.
But when you go to those events, that's what you expect.
Every tournament is different.
When you go into a standard tournament, consistency and standardization is key. And the easiest way to do that is with simple L-shaped ruins made out of
Cardboard.
basic stuff or 3D printed.
Jenga blocks. I've had Jenga blocks as ruin walls before.
I've used Jenga blocks, pieces of just card, like random old computer parts, Lego, these magnetic like block things. It's so easy to make. There are going to be places which will open up, event halls that will open up where they will be able to be in one place and have all these lovely different tables. And those events will be fantastic.
Oh yeah, they're great.
When you're looking at places which don't have a permanent home, maybe either monocolor or very limited color.
Unpainted.
The terrain I play on locally has different colors with their terrain, and there are some slightly different shapes. Ooh. Again, it is very much consistency. It does suck, but I think it's fine.
Comes with the territory. You've kind of got to accept this is a problem, this is the solution, and that's about it.
Because when you go to a tournament, you're playing 3 or 5 games. So even if you went to play one game with your friend on this awesome terrain, and then you're like, I'm going to play some games at tournaments. Okay, you've just played 3 games at a tournament on the same boring terrain. You're already 3-1 in terms of how many games you played on ruins versus how many games you played on a nice table. Just purely the fact that you played 3 games in one day here and 1 over here, because that's kind of the expectation.
You called it a nice table. I'm glad you agreed that L-shaped ruins are terrible.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? Like, I think when people go, oh, L-shaped ruins are horrible, no one is out there going, hell yeah, I love L-shaped ruins. Oh, I only like, if I see a tree on a board, I cry and I go home. It's like, no.
Foliage.
People deal with it. People are fine with it. Would it be nice if you could have these really nice tables that have trees and barricades and pipes and all this other stuff?
Yes, because there's rules for them in the 40k rules.
It'd be lovely. There are rules for them, but you then have to try and have something which you can do at scale. And tree terrains don't scale very well because they'll have trees on them that can break off. A ruin is very, very solid.
Especially when it's made of Jenga blocks.
Whatever it's made of, if it's sprues that you've just stuck together, to make
I've seen
right
that
angle.
done before. It's functional, which is all it needs to be at these events.
It's functional, it gets you into the game. If you want to play some Warhammer, it works. And then you can look at the models and go, oh, the models are really cool. You don't have to worry about how the terrain looks. You can just look at your opponent's models and go, hell yeah.
That works.
I turned up and I winged it, as I always do in every video, everything I do, every tournament I go to. And this is the other thing, actually, the topic that I've now just thought of right now because I'm smart. I speak to some people, and when sometimes they will release the pairings of who you play against, maybe a couple of days before the tournament starts, or the day before. For some of the ones I go to, it's like the morning before. People are like, okay, I'm going to plan for what I do. I sometimes look at it and go, yeah, this is what they do, and then I'll forget it by the time I get there, and then I just wing it every time, and that's just more fun. Like, you don't have to go in there, you don't have to do massive amounts of research into your opponent immediately. You can have a look and go.
Even when I've talked to tournament players, I talked to the guy who won with Deathwatch, and I was like, oh, knowing who was you against in your next day 2 or day 3 game, did you plan and check what they could do? And he's like, no, I just went to sleep. I know what my army can do. That's the important thing.
Yeah, I've been on streams where I've gone, okay, here's my opponent, what do we do? One time I did that, there was so much traffic getting to the event that my opponent changed, so it was all worthless.
Right.
The other time I did that, I went, yep, this is Mordaka. Okay, I know what Mordaka does, I know how it's scary, but I've not played against it, so until you've actually been punched in the face, you really don't know how to react to it. So
it's I know the velocity, the angle, but I don't know if it's going to hurt that much.
All of that research doesn't really do much. Obviously, you can kind of plan for it if you know what your army does and you know where the weak spots are. But again, unless you've played against a lot of things, that doesn't really help you. So again, it's just, you can just turn up to a tournament and wing it and have fun. I've not had a bad game against anyone. Everyone's always been super friendly, and that's been the main thing. I've played 19 games at tournaments now, and I've had 19 very, very fun games, whether I win or lose, whether I've lost by 80 plus points, whether I've won or lost by 1 point. I was going to say whether I've won by 80 points, but I've never done that. So, one day I might win.
One day Paul will win a game.
The worst games I've had have been when I have been in a bad mood. The worst game I think I played, the dice weren't going my way, and I'd literally like a week before been made redundant. So I was in a foul mood, and it just wasn't happening. I just wanted to go hang out with Steve because just hang out for a bit, and it just the game we really shouldn't have played that game. That was on me more than anything. And when you go to tournaments, unless you are going in a foul mood to begin with, the atmosphere just picks you up. Last tournament, like I say, I wasn't feeling very well. I'd been tired. By the end of the tournament, I was still tired, but I had a really good time, and it did definitely kind of invigorate me somewhat. You meet some awesome people there who are just so friendly, so outgoing,
they give out sweets.
So
you should give them the best player award.
Exactly. If they bribe you, give them your money, and then because that's how bribes work, you just give them the money back.
Yes. I'm bribing you. Thanks for the money.
Yeah, and then it's just and I met some great people who I talked to outside of the tournaments, who I play games with outside of the tournaments. I met people who are far too goddamn young and make my knees hurt. I've realized that the majority of people don't understand my F-Zero X Vanguard veterans because they're not over 30, and the only people who do know about them are people who are my age and have very bad knees. Everyone is just lovely, and the atmosphere at all the events I've been to has been great. And I like to make sure people are aware that I'm not saying all of this to denounce your experiences. Maybe you have been to tournaments, or maybe your local community is garbage and the atmosphere isn't there.
You might be a horrible person and everyone around you is awful.
Maybe that is completely the case. But for me, and I think for most people I talk to who have been to lots of different places, people have very few bad things to say about some people. And I think it's such a small percentage. And again, the small percentage can really affect you, because when you come to expect good games, you have a bad game, it does affect you, right? I'm sure you've probably had a similar thing with comments, right? Like could have hundreds and thousands of lovely comments, and that you get one, and you're just like, that hurts. Because you're only...
Stop very specifically identifying my weaknesses and bringing them to my attention.
I was going to say you're only human, but you're not. You're only vampiric. But it still sucks. So I can understand that if you've had a bad tournament experience, it's going to play on your mind, and it's going to be, again, like I say, twice shy, bitten once. That's not the phrase. That once twitten. Wow, I'm doing well. We've been talking for too long. My words.
Twice bitten, once bitten, twice shy. That's
once
it.
Bitten, twice shy.
This is a normal thing. I don't know if it's known outside the UK. Once bitten, twice shy.
No. If your English isn't your first language, you're all right. If it's not outside the UK,
if being British isn't your first nationality.
If proper British Queen's English is not your first language, then let me tell you all about once bitten, twice shy. Essentially, it means that if you have been affected by something, you are going to be very
wary of similar situations for much longer than is reasonable.
If you were bitten by a dog, you're going to be wary around dogs. When you have one bad experience, even if you've had 100 good ones, that one bad one is still going to fit into your mind. And when they are bad, they can be really bad. I've not had one personally. I can see where people can get the idea from that these things are bad, based on what they would see on stuff like Reddit or other social media.
The internet, yes.
The internet. Potentially controversial. If every game you play at 40k is bad, there is only one common denominator. So
there's two. It's 40k and you.
But it's 40k and you. But if a lot of people are enjoying 40k, there may be another problem. And I'm sure that maybe there's probably one or two people who might be out there that might be related to. And there might be someone out there who is just the most unlucky person in the world. They're the nicest person in the world, but they've played 20 games and they've just found the 20 horrible people. I'm sure that has happened. But again...
It's not very likely. It's really not very likely.
If you put a bad attitude in, if you go to a tournament expecting it to be full of sweaty tryhards, then you're not going to have a good time, and people aren't going to like playing against you because you are the problem. But if you go in there with an open mind and let the atmosphere take you and just look at people's models and just have a good time, just go and play some 40k, you will, I would say guaranteed, but I don't want to say guaranteed because then you'll complain at me if you don't. You'll most likely have a very good time at these tournaments.
Yeah. The tournaments keep running for fun. They somehow manage to sustain themselves, and it isn't just some horrible people getting together every now and then to hate on each other and then say, do you want to do this again in 2 weeks' time?
UKTC, the Super Major, the South Coast Super Major, when I went there, they said that it was twice as busy as it was the previous year. So the scene is just getting bigger. More and more new people are getting involved. And if it was crap, where are these people coming from? Are they just finding all the masochists in the world to come and play 40k?
Well, there is a new Emperor's Children Codex.
Yeah, there you go. It's all the Emperor's Children's players. That's where they all are. But yeah, so don't worry about tournaments. If you want to play 40k, they're a good place to go and try and play 40k.
I hear they play 40k there quite a bit. That's the recommendation from us. Just try some tournaments. See how they go. Most of them will be absolutely fine. Same as any other community event.
Exactly. You should be all right.
Do you want to mention your channel? You said you don't have any social medias, so just your YouTube channel?
Paul is bad at stuff. You'll probably put a link in the description.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably have a pithy comment in the comments about Centurions. Yeah, I make videos about 40k. Every so often, I have a mental breakdown in them for comedy, of course. And I stream every so often as well. Paul, bad at stuff on Twitch.
Rather than Paul is bad at stuff. Was that already taken?
If you can't put spaces in a name, which I don't think you can on Twitch, I could have used underscores, I now realise, now that I've looked at my homepage of Twitch. But I didn't, and so I'm just have to deal with that.
I'm sure we'll see me and Paul together sometime in the future. Everyone can have a great day at tournaments in 40k. And we're done. You can relax now, if you weren't already relaxed.
Like, just slump like here, just like, yeah, I was all about Warhammer.
I had a great time. Oh, the times we had.
Such a good time.
Yes, Paul. I know.